were the 11th of November 2022, and I decided to record a video that I haven't prepared a lot. I've just taken notes for a couple of dozens of minutes, and it's the result of, I think, almost 10 days of thinking and meditating. And yeah, I will not read what I wrote, but it's just a thread to follow what I intend to. I intend to talk for a few dozens of minutes. First, I want to say that I improve intellectually, maybe morally, I'm not sure. Intellectually, I improve every day, every waking hour, for the simple reason that every experience that I have, whether it's what I call an empirical experience, namely either encountering people and talking with people, or reading books, or reading the news, or watching videos, I incorporate every information within my conceptual structure that I partly have in my mind, the broad overview. So I become smarter every hour, every day, which is kind of good, because intelligence in this sense, if it brings wisdom, is good. But the problem is that I feel frustration when I look backward on my own development, and also this is why I have been partly reluctant, and I'm still partly reluctant to talk continuously, simply because I know that whatever I say, I will not deny that I said what I said, but because the logical consequence of improving constantly intellectually is that whatever I say becomes outdated. It's not that I haven't said this, but 1 hour later, or let us say a day later, or a couple of days later, my view has changed, not completely, but it has improved. I have a new perspective, I have more data, I have a new... Yeah, so that's why I do not speak as much as I could, simply because I'm intelligent enough to understand that I improve constantly. But I intend to, at some moment, to go completely public and to become to talk as long as possible on a constant daily basis. Yeah. Also, I said, yeah, I'm aware now. Improving intellectually implies that I am capable of formulating a very complex idea in a more simple way, more intelligible way. And one of the ideas that I try to express in my video is that every I, every self, every ego, in a sense of transcendental ego of Kant, in a way, every self is a self, and every you is a you. So there's only you and I at some level when the truth is being expressed, in a sense that if I say 2 + 2 = 4, I say this mathematical truth, and it is true for you, whoever you are. Yeah, but it's very simple with simple mathematics, simple arithmetic or geometry, but for other types of truth in the other sciences, it's much more difficult. But that's why I say sometimes that more and more often that the other is my mirror. You are my mirror, whoever you are. And I do not always enjoy my reflection in the mirror, and I can understand that you might not enjoy your reflection in me if I am your mirror. So yeah, that's what I've been thinking about. I could make very long reflections, because a mirror is a reflection about one's own image in the mirror. I do not always look very good. What to do when the image that we have in the mirror is not good? There's a temptation to break the mirror. There's a temptation to make aesthetic surgery, to put makeup, or to work on oneself. There's also acceptance sometimes. Sometimes I look good. I'm not talking about my physical self necessarily, but also this is what I intend to talk about. There's the intention to work on oneself without artificial makeup and stuff, but simply to look better by working on oneself. This is what I have been doing, what I call my own American revolution. Yeah. Also, what I want to say is that the totality of world knowledge is made available on the internet. All the archives of the past. Of course, sometimes it costs a lot of money because there are old books which are made public on some websites, and there are older books which are available in printed version in libraries which sell online, or the big companies like Amazon, etc. And there are the new books which are being published daily, the new videos, the new conferences. The totality of world knowledge is made available. What I have been more or less consciously, but more and more consciously trying to provide is the conceptual frame to situate every information within the formal view of the totality. I have been working on this because my work consists in simplifying very complex ideas, basically. And the better I get, and I improve every day, the more simply I can share very complex ideas, but it's still too complex for others who have not the time, the interest, the IQ, the culture, the education, etc., etc. Yeah, but what I want to say is that within this knowledge, I will develop a little bit later on that, there is the solution to almost all problems. I've been thinking about this. People who suffer from alcohol addiction, drug addiction, cigarette, porn addiction, sleep problems, psychological problems, problems in their relationship within the couple, with their wife or their husband, how to raise children, how to homeschool children, how to get a job, how to succeed in an interview, etc. How to succeed to pass your exam or your test, or all the world knowledge is made available. What is lacking is the formal view of the totality. This is what I am working on, and I work every day, all day, and I have improved my documents. I have restructured my documents, and I will share my documents in English and in French, probably on the channel Phénoménologie de l'esprit. I will put the link down in the description. I will talk about this later. I will try now to unify myself, and I have to stop switching from one channel to the other. I intend to speak, as long as I speak on YouTube, on one channel, so that I don't have to switch from one or the others. So I recommend that if you are watching this, if you're interested, you follow me on my channel Phénoménologie de l'esprit. I will put the links to all my channels. Yeah. Also, UPS. Here, this video is intended for the people. It's, like I said, it's for everyone. Potentially everyone can watch this, but I know that in the short term, mostly people who have been following my channel, who share the same particularities, probably young white males, and with probably a higher than average IQ, because I develop very complex thoughts, etc., etc. But UPS, I will not talk about UPS in detail in this video, but basically that the universal, the particular, the singular. I've been talking about this in a lot of my videos, and I've understood over the past week or so that the singular, that's me, Luca, that's my name, Luca Goetz, that's my name. What I call my empirical self, but now I will speak in my name, that's Luca. That's my singular self. I know that the universal is God. That's what is meant when God is the truth, because the universal is the same for all. Example, mathematics, the theorem of Pythagoras, etc. But it works in every field. The physics, chemistry, earth sciences, biology, anthropology, psychology, economics, etc., etc., philosophy and religion, the universal is the same for every thinking human. My example is a 57-year-old peasant in Vietnam. Whether or not he can speak English is not important, but if the truth is translated in a language which is intelligible to him, the truth for him and the truth for me will be the same, because there's only one truth. But in order to reach the universality, one has to go through the mediation of the particular, and human beings are singular individuals. And I have held the belief for more than 4 years now, with various more or less consistency, but that my singular self, my empirical self, me, the individual that you see, was the root of all evil. That which the religions call Satan, Lucifer, Loki for the pagans, or the devil, or whatever name is used. So I adopted some sort of a dualism, that my mind was good and my body was evil. That really simple-minded dualism, which brings about schizophrenia and psychosis and bipolar disorders. I still, in a way, I still believe that I know that I am the root of all evil in my reality, but my reality is reality, because there's only one reality. But I'm not just the root of all evil. I'm not just negative. That's what the negative is. I'm not just that. So I've understood it recently. So what I have understood, what I have believed, is that the reason why I have failed to communicate, there are many reasons, but one of the predominant reasons is that I have tried to erase my singular self almost completely, and when I talked about my singular self over the past few months, since the month of February, so for the past many months, it's always, I've always, when I talked about psychology, my individual psyche, most of the time I have made fun of myself, I have humiliated myself, I have revealed embarrassing truth about myself, I have laughed at myself, etc., etc. And I do not regret, in a sense, that there are embarrassing aspects about my singular self, but I'm not just negative. I've understood this recently, that my empirical self, Lucas, with my identity as a singular individual, what I think of myself as just being me as an individual. Most of my life, if I'm honest with what I think, has been a failure. I have failed in most of what I've achieved. No, precisely in most of what I've attempted to achieve, because if I had achieved, it wouldn't have been a failure in the sense of yeah. But I have started to become more confident in the sense that I am not a complete failure. This is what I've been telling to myself as a singular individual. Yeah, I will not delve into this, but yeah, I've understood this. So now about my American Revolution. I've understood precisely, because of the relationship between the universal and the singular, I have understood recently that by watching my own videos, when I promote books by Daisy Luther, Ron Paul, Charles Murray, Chase Rachels, etc., I've asked myself, but why don't anyone watch my video? Why do not I receive comments? Why aren't people interested? Although I talk about God and spirit and philosophy in a rigorous way. I talk about everything, but not randomly. I mean, in the videos that I make where I speak like this, I talk kind of randomly, although there's a vague structure, but it's not consciously structured. But the videos where I put serious work to structure and to speak seriously about the totality, why aren't people interested? I've asked myself this question. It has brought a lot of suffering and frustration in me, and I've understood. That's what I believe that I've understood. That's what has influenced my action, is that I cannot convince others to act in a certain way if I do not act in this way for good myself. I had some sort of revelation in a way by watching my own videos, because I said to myself, no one watches my video. I believe that they are kind of important, not necessarily always for good, but they are important, and there are some of my videos in which I find enlightenment and wisdom and strength even. So I've started to understand, but I cannot convince others to follow ethical rules. Here, ethical doesn't mean moral, it's simply ethics. Here means how to behave for the good, but not the moral good, the common sense good, namely take care of one's own household, etc., etc. So I have started to do this myself. I've been leading my own, what I call my own American revolution. It's just the beginning, but it has begun by first making introspection. So here I talk empirically about what I have been doing for the past couple of weeks, and more each day. I mean, not more and more, but more consistently. I watch videos on the channel Psych2Go. I will put the link. It's an excellent channel. This is what I call American excellence. I guess it's American, but the Americans, if I had to be honest, they produce, I mean, sometimes there's garbage. I've been thinking about this, watching videos about the problem with the fast food industry, etc. Plus there is the problems with the CIA, etc. But when you think that the internet is a product of America, officially, I mean, officially means in the historical perspective, and the overwhelming majority of great channels on the internet, on all fields of knowledge, they are American. It's so, in a way, that excellence in the realm of content production in the 21st century, excellence is so common, whether in music, economics, psychology, science. There are conferences that are the greatest scientists alive, some of the greatest, Mr. Krauss, Mr. Hagelin, Neil Tyson, deGrasse. These are the scientists, the cosmologists that I know about, which happen to be American, and they make conferences which are freely available. There are, yeah, it has become so common that excellence has become mediocre. That's the curse of excellence. When you consistently produce excellence, people get used to it, and it becomes mediocre, which the rigorous definition of mediocrity, it has a negative connotation, but the rigorous definition is simply that which is in the middle. To be mediocre is to be in the middle. Yeah. So this channel Psych2Go that I have discovered recently. Also, there's another channel. It's here. The other channel is a woman. I guess she's American. She's name is feraluxe. I will put the link also. The channel Psych2Go has helped me tremendously, because it talks about mental problems, and I'm aware that I have suffered and still suffer from mental problems, many, but understanding oneself, one's own suffering, is a release, because it appeases the soul, and it helps to cure oneself. And that's why we live in an age, among other things, where the solution to almost all problems are made available in real time for anyone. So all the people who suffer from psychosis, autism, schizophrenia, depression, bipolar disorder, etc., etc., just to name psychological problems, or a psychiatric problem, sometimes they can take a few dozens of minutes each day, and they will be relieved. It has helped me tremendously. It has helped me a few weeks ago when I understood my determinations of high intelligence, that a lot of my behaviors and suffering come, and the way I behave is importantly determined in an important way by my high intelligence. And then I have studied psychology as the more psychiatric problems, and the more I understand myself, the more it's a relief in a way. Why I have hated myself, people who hate themselves. I have some really negative psychological tendencies, partly sociopathy. It means people who suffer from being within society and who make others suffer, not necessarily consciously. That would be psychopathy, but psychopathy means the suffering of the soul, so it's partly linked. There are the dark empath, as they call this. I've been studying psychology, I would say 1 hour each day, and reflecting, meditating, and it has helped me a lot, and I recommend this channel greatly because it's a great help. Also, I've noted here on my paper that I get frustrated sometimes because I realize that a lot of my older ideas, the ideas of me as an empirical self, Luca, what I call my ideas, namely formulated with my own experience, my own words, my own limitations, the more I progress in time and in wisdom, the more I look backward and remember some of my older ideas, and I say to myself, but these were great ideas. I should have trusted my ideas. And now this explains what I have gone through and what I will do for as long as I think it's relevant. I will trust myself more as a singular individual. So for me, that's a reversal of perspective. I do not trust myself completely because I know that I'm not completely good. I've kept saying that I was evil, negativity, etc. But I'm not just that. But no, I will not say, oh, I'm all good, etc. That would be that would be manipulation. No, but I've understood that I have to trust myself to be more assertive for the good, without falling into the trap of arrogance. That's negative assertion. I understand why I can be arrogant. I understand my own determinism, etc., etc. But yeah, I will trust myself because the more I grow in wisdom or intelligence, the more I realize that I had great ideas that I can call my own and that I have failed to exploit, in a sense of to use, because I had believed that they were not good enough. They were not on the level of the standards of the writings of Hegel. I talk about this very often, but I will not develop here. So yeah, my American Revolution. So it begins with introspection. Each day I make introspection by watching videos about psychology and about meditating about myself, my own life, the reason for my choices, my past, my plans. I'm not in a mood of scheming consciously, but what do I want to achieve? What rules do I have to follow in my behavior, etc. I think about this a few hours a day, which helps me a lot. It stabilizes my mood. It's really helpful. And also, in a more practical way, I clean my room. I have spent many days cleaning my room. And here I explain. That's the change of perspective. So here I talk for the people who have been following me for many months, maybe many years. I explain my development to the people. I mean, eventually it will be available for everyone. But here, as of now, we have 11th of November. The people who will watch, the 10 or 15 people who watch my videos, I explain my process. Okay? So here it's specifically for you. Enjoy while you can, because eventually I will become widespread at some moment. Yeah, so I explain. I have inverted my perspective, not completely, but I've understood. It's not... I know that I've understood this, but I believe that it's the right thing to do. In order to solve all the world's problems, which I know are reflections of my own problems. I don't know how the connection works, but I know they are a reflection, like a mirror, because I think that the world is my mirror. And I have suffered for many years of just looking at the negative aspects of the world. It has played a tremendously important role in my intellectual development, namely this focus on the negativity. And I forgot the positive. I will not now pretend that everything is positive, but I am willing to acknowledge that not everything is negative. That's the first step towards healing. Yeah, so I begin, it's more or less it's chronological. In the morning when I wake up, I begin by introspection. I clean my room. I do not do this every day, because once the room is cleaned, it's cleaned for a very long time, but I clean the small, how do you call this? When you bring a little bit of the disturbance, disorder caused by work. I've watched a video about very intelligent people, they bring disorder when they work. Yeah, so I clean my room, it takes me a few minutes, but also I do this structurally in a way that I have registered almost all my items. I have gotten rid of a tremendous amount of useless stuff. I register everything that I buy. So here that's connected with my singular self. I have been an accountant for a few months. I register everything which comes in and everything which comes out. So I hold I don't know how to call this in English, an inventory of all my possession, and my purpose is to get rid of more and more material possession. But I want to be aware of what I own. Okay. Here I will make an anecdote that I thought about, again connected with my singular self. For two reasons. 4 years ago, when I had my God experience, I envisioned partly life as being partly a survival horror game, because there are pretty horrifying things in life sometimes, and the purpose is to survive. It's not just that, but yeah. And in Resident Evil games, the management of resources, organization, order, structure, that's the, how do you call this, the room with the nice music where you feel safe. I don't always feel safe in my room, but simply I want order, structure. Everything has to be rigorously catalogued, etc., etc., so that I know my items. Yeah. But I'm not. How should I explain this? I will develop later about sharing my stuff, but yeah. So yeah, first I do introspection, then I put order, clarity, and simplicity in a sense of minimalism, getting rid of more and more items in my immediate environment, in which I spend 20 hours a day, sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less, but broadly 20 hours a day. Yeah, so it consists in also I go out every day more and more. It has played a tremendous role. I go out and I talk to people. I haven't been used to doing this for many years, since 2009, and over the past few months I have talked more and more to people, and it has helped me understand why people do not understand me when I talk seriously about philosophy, simply because the disconnection between my metaphysical view, which is not disconnected from reality, it's simply a purely abstract perspective, and the view of ordinary people, it's so far separated that talking to ordinary people helps me understand why I fail to communicate. Here I will make a brief comment. I have held the belief, I no longer hold this belief, that the reason why I failed to communicate, although I have been working, say 16 hours a day, 7 days a week since the month of March, I have made sometimes videos which are the product of hours, days, weeks, months, years, decades of work with almost no success. A few dozen of people, no comment. and it has caused me a tremendous frustration sometimes, and lack of understanding. And I have believed for many months that the reason why I couldn't reach the people that I wanted to reach was because my work was not serious enough, was not rigorous enough, it was not good enough. Talking to ordinary people has helped me understand that actually, no, it's the complete opposite. Is that my videos are way too complex. It's infinitely too complex for the ordinary persons. It's not that they are necessarily not intelligent enough. It's simply because they do not have the time or the education or the culture or sometimes the IQ to understand when I express myself more or less seriously. And I've understood also over the past few weeks that when I speak vaguely seriously on a formal standpoint, people are frightened. I've understood, I hadn't understood this, that when I try to be serious, I scare people. Unconsciously. I can be sometimes consciously scary, but actually when I scare others, they scare me back. That's how it works. But I have understood that I unconsciously frighten people, not with my dubious moral aspects, but by my intellectual seriousness in a way. When I try to be vaguely serious, I frighten people. I've understood this. So now, here I will make a comment. I'm in a stable mood. Oh yeah, also I sleep. No, I sleep at least 6 or 8 hours a night, because there have been moments over the past few months where I said to myself, I go on a commando mode, I sleep for 4 hours a night, not more, but no, it doesn't work. I've done this, I've tried to do this several times. I become insane when I do not sleep. That's part of trying to re-establish a sense of balance, that taking care of my singular self, not in a sense of preservation, no, but I mean, eventually yes, but not, how should I explain this? I've understood that I was important on a singular level, but that I was valuable also. I can, because when I say I am important, it can be just important for bad. But no, I am also valuable. I'm not completely worthless at a singular level. But I will not suddenly change and say, oh, I want to preserve myself at all costs, etc. No, but I have to stabilize myself just chemically by sleeping. It does a whole lot of good to sleep. This is the kind of common sense that I've started to recover, that sleeping is good, because when you don't sleep, you become insane. You can sleep well and become insane as well, but then the problem comes from somewhere else. But I advise people, if I can give a wisdom, sleeping the proper measure between depending on the characteristic of the person, the conditions are, but sleeping, let's say, between 7 and 9 hours. That's what the specialists say, as far as I know. If you do not sleep enough, that's not good. If you sleep too much, that's not good. You have to find the proper balance, which is a logical determination of measure. Sleeping is good. If you are a human being, sleeping after a hard day's work under more or less normal circumstances is not a sin. Yeah, it's the kind of common sense that I have to recover. So yeah, I'm in a stable mood because I work all day. I mean, it's not a blue collar labor. I do not. I have done this when I clean my room. I have cleaned my fridge, cleaned the bathroom, cleaned on the ground, etc. I can do blue collar. I mean, not blue collar, but the cleaning lady role. That's what I talked about in my previous videos more than 10 days ago. But I work, in a sense, my work consists in making supplies, going outside, talking to people. It's part of my work. I dedicate myself fully to my job, which is philosopher. I call myself a philosopher and a theologian. Yeah. Yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, taking care of my singular self, it implies making food supplies daily, not in a, oh, let's buy as much as possible. No, I go out peacefully outside and I pick up for a few dozens of euros of food. I am partly disabled, so I can carry a limited quantity of products, but I buy each day I go out for a few hours and I buy food supplies, water, medical drugs, not for myself, because in my view I am willing to share this with the people around me, but to be responsible. That's what my American Revolution, it begins by being self-reliant. I will not start a garden because I can't physically. I live in a small city and I am partly disabled, so I will not start a garden. I will not start a permaculture farm. I wanted to do this many years ago, but then I chose to break my physical mobility for religious purposes, so I can no longer be a gardener. I could eventually, but it would be very complicated, so I do not intend to do this, but simply to get supply, to be responsible, to be able to help others. That's what happens in planes with the oxygen mask. First, you have to put your own mask, because if you want to help others, you have to be able to help yourself. If you invert the roles, you say, oh, I want to help everyone, but if you are a wreck, you can't. Your attempt to help others will not function. That's common sense. You have first that healthy selfishness. It's healthy selfish behavior, like the kind of selfishness that Ayn Rand produces, talks about, is that to be selfish in a healthy way means to take care of yourself so that you might help others. Because if you are a mess, because the kind of things that a lot of white people suffer from is pathological altruism. Jared Taylor talks about this in some of his books. Pathological altruism is pathological. If you are pathologically altruistic, you think you want to help others, and you may consciously intend to help them, but you cause more harm than good, because you yourself, if you think that you are worthless, if you try to desperately help others while experiencing yourself as being worthless, you will not do as much good as you think you want to do. So first, take care of yourself. That's common sense. That's what I call American common sense. So I do supplies every day. Yeah. Also, I practice minimalism. I reduce my material standards of living and my comfort every day. I take only cold showers for 2 minutes. I take no bath, no hot shower. I use a minimum of hygiene product, toothpaste, etc., etc. I sleep on the ground. I have no mattress. I do not cook vegetables. I only eat raw vegetables and fruits and bread. I buy bread, but otherwise I only eat raw vegetables and raw fruits. So I do not use energy to cook my food, and I do not consume plastic I do not consume plastic in my daily diet. I really have a minimalist standards of living. I have gotten rid of most of my clothes, a lot of my books, a tremendous amount of useless objects. I practice really minimalism. I reduce my level of comfort. I keep my internet connection and my computer and some of my books because I use them for work, but otherwise I reduce drastically my standards of living. I sleep on the ground. Yeah. And I drink only water. I thank God for every glass of water, of clear water that I can drink. I am joyful when I can drink a clear glass of water. Also, I renounce most of what I call my vices, sugar, fast food, of course, cigarettes, I was not a cigarette addict, but I used to smoke. Porn, of course, I haven't watched porn for months and months. I do not masturbate, no alcohol, etc. All the classical sins, I've given up everything. I have lost a tremendous amount of weight over the past few months with my new diet. I exercise not by doing sport, but simply by going outside to be responsible. It's demanding physically for me to walk outside because of my physical partly disability, and I carry my own package. So I exercise myself, which is good because it enables me to sleep better and to remain in shape. So I have lost a lot of weight. Yeah. Also, I pick up the trash. That's part. It seems like a joke, but it's not a joke. I pick up trash and cigarette butts on the street every time that I go out. Here, that's the connection with my philosophical view. If everyone acted the way I do, the streets would be clean. That's the connection with Kantian, what I call Kantian ethics, modern technological development with the internet, and day-to-day singular level life. This is really important, and I will use this as a weapon in my revolution. Namely, if everyone picked up the cigarette butts and the trash for 20 minutes when they go outside, the streets would be cleaned. There would be no need for public persons financed by taxes to clean the streets, because people would be virtuous in a minimalist sense, not minimalist in the sense that I previously mentioned, minimalist in a minimum of civic virtue. If everyone cleaned the streets on his path by picking up the garbage, first people would say, okay, I will stop throwing the garbage in the street, because that would be embarrassing, and there would be no need for civil servants to do the work. People would eventually stop smoking, they would stop drinking Coke, etc., etc. So it would lower down the problem of health problems, lung cancer, which are in a socialist country like France, it's financed by the taxpayers' money. So the persons, they finance through their taxes the health care of the people who smoke. So it's collectivized financing of health problems caused by lack of individual virtue. Anyway, people are not individually responsible, it's the system which produces this. But I understand the system, and what I can do to struggle against the system is to purify myself, to be virtuous at this level, on a singular level. I do not contribute, and I do my part. And if everyone acted the same, that's a very simplified view of Kantian ethics, the streets would be cleaned, the tobacco industry would vanish, the need for socialized healthcare for lung cancer would vanish, the civil servants who are, this is partly a bullshit job, it's not their fault, but it's a job which is only made necessary because we live in an age where the streets of most Western countries have become filled with trash because there is no more public virtue. It can be explained sociologically, sociobiologically, because in big crowded cities, people, they don't care about public property because the dissolution of the traditional family. I could make a sociological analysis, and I intend to do this, not in English, in French, to explain, but this is part of my revolution. I act on a singular level to solve global problems. I give food stamps to beggars inspired by the American ethos of JFK and Charles Murray. I have read, I will talk about the books that I've been reading. Charles Murray says in The Bell Curve, and in, I guess, most of his books, that the ideal of America, as he envisioned this, there is no welfare state. The unfit from a social standpoint, either because of sociobiological, there has to be if there are very intelligent people, there has to be very less intelligent people. And the beggars that I've encountered, they are not stupid, but eventually in a continuum, if there are very intelligent people, there are there are stupid people, and most of the time the people with a very low IQ, they struggle to fit in society. That's not the case of the beggars, not all of them that I've encountered, but it is a mathematical necessity. And there are also socio-biological problems of behavior, impulsive tendencies, there are problems of psychiatric insanity, etc., etc. It's not their individual fault, but that's a mathematical necessity within a population distribution. And then there are individual problems which are caused by a systemic dysfunctioning. Socialism, the welfare state, economic destructionism that Ludwig von Mises talks about brings about in a structural way people who are excluded from society. It's not their individual fault. There has to be people who are excluded when the economy is systematically sabotaged by economic destructionism. So it produces excluded people. The left, they blame this on capitalism. The intelligent libertarians, they blame this on statist regulation. And what Charles Murray says is that if there were no state or a very limited state, people would be spontaneously virtuous because they would understand that the welfare of the community depended on common ties of reciprocity. It's not that people would become good out of the kindness of their heart. They would be good, which means they would be good for a reason of self-interest, which is called kind of virtue. This would be bourgeois virtue in the most noble sense. Namely, that's how I envision this in traditional American society before 1933 with the Roosevelt, the New Deal and the beginning of the welfare state, etc. How I envision this from my own perspective, the historical knowledge, officially, people practiced civic virtue in a sense, and there was public distribution, and the poor, the beggars, etc. First, a lot of Americans were poor. I knew already this, but I've reread the bell curve, or read more thoroughly. Half of the population were poor, but not because of the economic crisis of 1929, because with modern standards, most of Americans were poor. But this is when America was virtuous and thriving. Yeah, that's how I envision this. And there was a lot of civic participation and strong ties of communities. The problem with community ties is that everyone kind of more or less knows each other, which puts pressure on social behavior, but it's good because it produces virtuous behavior. That's Nathaniel Hawthorne, The Scarlet Letter. I haven't read the novel, but I get the broad view. Namely, it's kind of oppressive in a sense because people are forced to comply and to act virtuously, but the positive effect is that society is virtuous. In a more loosely connected society where the state takes care of all the interactions, people say, oh, no, I am free to do whatever I want. But if everyone says so, on a collective level, it produces what we call degeneracy, social degeneracy. Yeah, that's how it works. That's why no one is guilty while everyone is partly guilty. That's Hegelian, everyone is guilty, no one is guilty, that's the unity of both, etc. So how to fix the problems of beggars? I do it the American way, JFK, Charles Murray, traditional 19th century America. I give food stamps, not money. I don't give money to beggars. Or if I trust them to do the job. Otherwise, I give food stamps and I say, okay, I give you a food stamp that I buy with my own money, not from the state, my own money. And I say to him, okay, you will work for, if they are disabled for 30 minutes, if they are fit for 1 hour, or depending on the amount, I say, okay, that's the price of 1 hour of work in a socialist country. Yeah, but I give you a food stamp and you work, either you clean the street, you distribute food, you do something productive, you help me accomplish one of my tasks, etc., etc. Because the other is a mirror of myself, and when I see a reflection which suffers, I try to heal, but not in an excessively compassionate way, in an American way, namely common self-interest. It's my interest to help you, it's your interest to be helped. If you don't want my help, you won't get my help, but if you do, I will help you, we will collaborate, and it will be for the benefit of both of us. That's my American view of how to handle, on a singular level, the problem of homelessness. On a universal level, denounce socialism. That's a joke. No, that's serious. That's what I intend to do. But then, what do you do to struggle against socialism on a universal level? That's good. But then, on a singular level, what do I do? I start my business, not officially, but I am an entrepreneur with my YouTube channels. I haven't had a lot of success, and I do not intend to make money, but I intend to become successful for the good eventually. That's my entrepreneurship. Yeah. Also, what did I... Okay, I cannot even... Yeah, I make donations also. So I give food stamps to beggars. I have done this consistently. That's my Kantian ethics. Whenever I encounter a beggar, I give him a food stamp in exchange for work. If the work is not satisfactorily done, I might change. It's not complete Kantian ethics, it's also partly utilitarian. It's complemented by John Stuart Mill. I will not give, because I've read books about economics, if you give free supplies to people, it increases the demand, and then everyone will ask, oh, we want food stamps. No, only if you work. I have to learn to toughen up on this a little bit. Yeah, also donations. I have been making donations to what I believe in, as of now. Maybe as long as I do politics. Wikipedia, there's a lot to say about Wikipedia. Sometimes it's not accurate, but it's an encyclopedia where the totality of knowledge is made available. It can be criticized, but the project, the idea which drives the project, it's worthy of respect. It comes from America. Again, I discovered the founders were Americans. I'm not even surprised at this point to another brilliant idea from Americans. The people who do not see the value, I'm a little bit frustrated. Those who have the privilege of having an internet connection, the totality of world knowledge is made available. Do not use internet to watch pornography or whatever. Okay, you can. I have watched porn many years ago. I no longer do this. I have watched a video. How do you call this? Playthrough, walk through video games, a live stream. Okay. But if you mature a little bit, reading Wikipedia, that's not optimal, but that's a first step. I give money to Wikipedia every day, and I will do this as long as I can because I believe that it's a good idea to share knowledge. And I also give money, I have given money, I will keep doing this to the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. If everyone acted like me, that would be wonderful. Yeah. Ron Paul would become a billionaire, he would be as corrupt as the elites that he denounces, and he would take over the system by buying the Fed, etc. That would be comical. No, Ron Paul, you are great, Mr. Paul. You have been consistently great. Maybe you can retire and let the new generation take over with your ideas, which are great. Yeah. Also, so that's part of my American Revolution. I'm here. That's my I would say my French side. Well, I'm also a communist. I'm a libertarian communist. Politically, as long as I do politics, I am a libertarian, but a communist libertarian. And I don't want others to be communist. That would be communism in a negative sense. But if I am a libertarian, I grant myself the liberty of being a communist just for myself, which means for me, I share my money, my food stamps. I work for free by picking up the trash. I exploit myself, but for the good of the community. That's my good self. Self-exploitation. I enjoy working for free if it can help. Because I get compliments. People say, oh, if everyone did like you, that would be wonderful, etc. I know. Why aren't there more people like me? The world would be a much better place. Oh, that's a joke. The world is such a mess, maybe because there are too many people like me in various ways. I don't know. That's a joke. No, but seriously. Yeah, I'm a communist. I have distributed willingly. I don't expect others to do this, but that's what I do. I have distributed hundreds of books. I clean up my library. I must be honest, I'm not completely good because I give up mostly the least interesting books, but it's good nonetheless because my best books, they are too complex. Not because people are not intelligent enough, but because they lack the culture, etc. And most of them are in English. I keep most of my English books because they are the best. And the French people, their level of English, the educational system. That's a problem that I'm working on. Yeah, but I have distributed hundreds of books with food stamps in them sometimes, with references to other more interesting books. And I will keep getting rid of, step by step, of most of the books in my library willingly. I give my property because I believe in public property of ideas. In public property, I took the moral engagement for myself that eventually I am willing to share all of my material property because I do not believe in the predominance of the material world. I will keep my computer, my camera, my most important books, my most important items as long as I can. But eventually I'm willing to share my material objects because I believe in the predominance of ideas. And the material world is a substratum to help share ideas. That's how I envision things as of now. So I try to minimize my dependence, my reliance on the material world, but I nonetheless need this as of now. Yeah, but I behave as some sort of a communist because I share my property. I've given for hundreds of books worthy of thousands of euros worth of money. Very good books. And I know this because when I put there are public in my town there are public boxes where people can put books, and when I put my books I know that they are better than others because they go away quickly, they are more recent, more expensive, more interesting, etc. So yeah, I behave as a communist. I work hard. I work every day. It's not work in a sense I'm not fanatically thinking, writing, and that. Work implies for me all the aforementioned steps, but I am dedicated 16 hours a day, because now I sleep 8 hours, to my project, my work. Yeah. Also, I insist upon competence. For me, the American ideal, if I had to define America for the good aspect, the first thing I can think of probably is, of course, there's self-reliance, entrepreneurship, but also competence. What does it mean for you to be an American? It means to be competent. Americans, they are competent. Sometimes they are brilliant, but the minimum is competence. I trust Americans for their competence. So I try to be competent. Here, the video that I'm producing here, it's not an example of competence because I improvise, it's not very rigorous, etc. But I've been reading common sense American books. Here I've picked with me the books that I've been reading over the past week. I never read this book thoroughly, but I already knew vaguely the idea. But now I've understood that one of the reasons maybe why I fail to communicate is because I promote books that I don't even read, because my reading are German metaphysics, but now I have the German metaphysical here it's a wonderful book because it's only available in French. It's way cheaper in French than the official German version. I mean, these are lectures on logic. It makes logic more intelligible, so I've been reading this book, and also partly logic, but also I am reading this. I will comment on this by Chase Rachels. So here I will be serious. I'm very serious. I've also been reading this book by Thomas Di Lorenzo of the Mises Institute, The Problem with Socialism. This book by Mr. Hans Hermann Hoppe. The original English version is Getting Libertarianism Right. It's a unity, a companion, not a unity, a gathering of conferences which can be found on the YouTube channel Property and Freedom Society. He talks about libertarianism, his relationship with Murray Rothbard, the alt-right, and his views, the Property and Freedom Society. I will put the link as well. So here it's a German from Germany, a German politician, a modern version, who is fascinated by the US, who has traveled and lived and taught and made himself a reputation in the United States of America, and the book is translated in French. And finally, I have read the summary of the bell curve. I have vaguely read this book, but I get the idea, because here that's kind of the negative, which is also positive, but the negative aspect of what I call Anglo-Saxon book, namely the statistics, the data. They are very useful, but they become outdated very quickly. So I'm not here in. I will give my perspective in continental Europe. It's maybe especially in France, but I know it's partly the case in Germany as well. It's more focused on the intellect, the style, the concepts, and the intellectual rigor. And the Anglo-Saxons here, they are typically statistics, data, graphs, numbers, correlations, quotes, facts. It's more empirical in the most blend sometimes, but it can be very useful. But here it's really a difference which is worthy of being noted. The French, I've read a few books written by French, they use very few except those who are really sociological books who have been trained in Anglo-Saxon universities, etc. But the sociologists, of course, they use statistics, but social science in France is more, it's not, I wouldn't say conceptual, it's more linguistic. There's a greater emphasis on language, whereas in England and in America, it's statistics. Everything has to be backed up, everything has to be rigorously sustained by empirical data, etc., which is kind of, it's not ironic, but it's worthy of noting. I've been reading the first chapter, which is chapter 0 of this book by Chase Rachels, inspired by Mises and Hoppe and Rothbard. It's purely conceptual. The epistemology, there are no statistics. The Austrian school of economics, it's purely deductive. They do not trust empiricism. That's why I like them, maybe. But actually, empiricism can be useful sometimes to check, to come back to one's own senses. Yeah. So I've been reading these great American books, The American Ideal, because Mises was a Jew. It's not a book by Mises, it's influenced by Mises. Mises and Rothbard were Jews, and Hoppe is a German. But it's the American ideal, as I envision this, of liberty. Yeah, so I've been reading these books, and yeah, what I can say is that the intellectual level, not all of them, but because the book by Hoppe reads, these are just conferences, but the problem with socialism, the bell curve, spontaneous order. This is what I call American standards in terms of intellectual competence. These are not, the bell curve really is a breakthrough. It's not breathtaking, but it's a breakthrough. It's really a very important book in the history of sciences, sociological science. It's really a defining moment. Yeah, but it's a very important book. But the problem with Socialism by Di Lorenzo, it's not a great book in the sense that it's just, I haven't read other books by Di Lorenzo, but it's not his greatest book. I've read the book. It takes a couple of hours. He could make another book like this who would be even better. He's not at his best. It's just a vulgarization, a popularization in a sense of his ideas, etc. But the average production, this is what I call American mediocrity for the good. It means that mediocrity here means in the middle, but the quality of this book in terms of intelligence, although it's relatively mediocre in comparison with what other books can do, but it's so far above what is done in a country like France. France is known for its high intellectual culture, but the average standards of America, they are so far above. I can say this confidently. So far above that above than a country like France, and probably England. It's better than France, slightly lower than the US, depending on the context. In physics and IQ, the English they are better. Richard Lynn, Dutton, Woodley of Many, etc., and the physicists, the modern physicists that I've listed, they are better in England. The mathematicians as well, I guess. But yeah, it's an average book. This is what I call American excellence, in the sense that mediocrity is excellent. In American, excellence is mediocre, because there are so many great intellectual production that if everything is great, it means that mediocrity is great. in a sense. Yeah. So it's just it's what I call common sense, namely there are no books like these, or very few in France, and those the French books which come even close to this, there are Philippe Nemo is a very intelligent libertarian author in France, but they borrow all their ideas from the Americans, either the American tradition or the Jewish authors of American citizenship like Ayn Rand, Mises, Rothbard, or Milton Friedman, etc., etc. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say. Also, yeah, so that's for my American Revolution. It continues. So introspection, clean my room, do all the things that I've listed. Then America has taught me also, Charles Murray, the bell curve, you have to have, and Hans Hermann Hoppe talks about this, in an ideal free society, there is no state, or the state is very limited, therefore it's the individuals have to rely upon one another to help one another. There is no social security, there is no welfare state, there are no unemployment paychecks. There has to be cooperation with the neighbors. One does not necessarily like one's neighbors, there can be conflicts, but to be an American as I envisioned this, not the Americans, the explorers of the early 19th century when you had to fight not polar bears, but grizzlies and buffaloes and Indians. No, but the Americans who had already settled in small communities, they had to cooperate with one another, and there was an ethos, an ethic of cooperation based on mutual recognized self-interest, and it doesn't always work, but I have tried to implement this by encouraging my immediate neighbors. Some of them, I've been distributing baskets of products to encourage local businesses and to encourage them to make supplies. Because if everyone acted responsibly, there would be no problem. So I do on a singular level, I do what I preach, and I preach what I do. If everyone acted like this, if everyone, you don't have to love your neighbors. I mean, the Bible says, love thy neighbor as thyself. But here, I'm not talking as a Christian. I'm talking about, I'm talking as a process, let us say. But if everyone acted, it's not kindness. It's not kindness. It's not, oh, I give you. No. I encourage you it's an offering. I offered a small sample, a basket of sample of products, local, organic, crafts-made product, to say, here's a small shop which sells local products. I encourage you to make supplies, to be responsible, because I am trying to become more responsible. That's a gift that I make. I don't expect anything in return, but that's a sign of good intention, because it's in my interest. I do not do this for your sake, but it's in my interest that you are responsible and you take care of your own household, because that's what I do. And if everyone did this, there would be a lot less problems. Then, relationship with the family, the empirical, official, biological family. It's important in the American tradition. I have tried to solve some of the misunderstanding and the problems. I have problems of communication, etc. I will keep trying to solve the problems, but yeah, I think about this. Then, so that's small circle, the introspection, the psyche. Then the immediate environment, clean your room. Then the neighbors living around you. Then family members of the biological family. Then on a wider circle, there is the city or the town. That's what I've been talking about. I pick up the trash, I give food stamps, etc. That's what I do on a local level. And also I've been encouraging over the past 10 days or so, local businesses. I didn't used to do that before. I buy the strict minimum just to survive on a day-to-day basis. Now I have become a little more common sense in a good American mentality that in order for a free society to exist, that's not my ultimate purpose, but I say that in order to have intellectual freedom, you have to have at first material freedom. So what I do is I encourage local businesses, local products. I do not buy any longer anything on the internet. I have done this for years. I could still do this, but I would rather encourage local businesses to do this, because I myself, I don't want to participate any longer buying on. I have done this, maybe I will again, but I would rather buy locally what I can to reduce the influence of big global corporations and to stimulate economic businesses. And I favor self-owned businesses, but they are the self, not the self-made man, but the boss, the owner. Yeah, there are chains of restaurants, chains of supermarkets. I participate as well, but I favor local producers, self-owned businesses. I encourage them by giving them my money and buying their products. I encourage local, organic, crafts-made products. It's in my interest to stimulate the local commerce, the local economy, because I am dependent onto others for my material existence. So it's in my interest. Here I speak universally. It's in everyone's interest to stimulate local businesses. If everyone acted like this, if everyone put his money into local products, organic products, craftsmade products, it would stimulate entrepreneurship, it will lower the taxes, people would develop a capitalist mentality in the good sense of small-scale capitalism, and if people cease to put their money into big multinational corporations and rather favor local businesses, it would be better for everyone. But the universal here, that would be the global corporation, it's still needed in a sense that the logistics, transport, etc., it's important, but I favor local businesses. And I speak honestly to the local businessman. I say, okay, I do not consume your products. That's what I said earlier. I only eat raw vegetables, raw fruits, and I only drink water, and I eat bread. A little bit of oil and salt, but otherwise I do not eat food which is in plastic or cans, etc. I buy to make supplies, but I do not consume plastic on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, and I favor renewable, ecological, organic products. Then the country. My country is not France. My country is Germany. That's my metaphysical country, but that's also my country of blood and soul, I would say. And my spiritual country is the United States of America. My mind, my spirit, it comes from America in a way. So my country, I am forced to think about France because the legislation of the region where I live is French. But here I will not develop, but the region where I live historically has been German. And in my view, it belongs to Germany. The French, they are not legitimate. I mean, they say they are, but no, in my view, Alsace, where I reside empirically, belongs to Germany, but it is under French rule. So I have to, I understand the intellectual and spiritual life of France. I don't understand the intellectual, spiritual life of modern day Germany, although metaphysical Germany, I understand more than any other German. In the sense, I'm more authentically German than anyone else. Yeah, for the good. And the bad maybe, but the good, let's hope so. Then, the civilization, which is Western civilization, because the development of spirit that I've been talking about in most of my videos, it's worldwide because of the circulation of information and because of the universality of the mind, but it's predominantly developing in the West because it's a reaction against the threat of erasure through mostly demographic replacement, cultural erasure, etc. That's how spirit develops. So yeah, and then the world, because thoughts are universal. So I repeat, here I have the structure: introspection, that my inner soul, clean my room, my neighbors, my biological family, my city or my town, my region eventually, my country, of the legislation of the country in which I live, which is not my historical, psychological, emotional, metaphysical, it's just the country where I reside as a citizen, which is France. the civilization, and the world at large. So I've understood recently that the people who try to solve the problems of the world, but who cannot even solve their own psychological problems, maybe they bring more problems than solutions. So I've tried to invert the perspective, not completely because I seek to find a proper balance. I keep getting informed on what happens in the world by reading books, by watching videos, watching the news, etc. But I work on my inner self, and if I can find inner peace, inner order, inner structure, it will be reflected in my immediate environment. And the more I understand myself, some of my problems, the more it appeases me. First, to understand is appeasing, and then once the problem has been identified, to work on the problem is a way to solve the problem. And I try to become the center of myself, what else? And to radiate, that's the story that I tell myself when I'm in a good mood. I will radiate order and light and calm and serenity, not only because I still have conflicts, but the more I appease my soul, the more I structure my mind, the more I clarify my thoughts, the more it is being reflected in my immediate spatio-temporal geographical environment, the more confident I am in my broader environment, and the more I interact with my empirical environment by talking to people around me, which I haven't been used to, the more it helps connect with my metaphysical view, which is by nature universal. So the more I work on my singular self, and the more I can find inner peace on some of my problems, the more I feel confident in going outward. And here, okay, 1 hour and 15 minutes broadly, I will say something very important. I am partly a Spinozian. Spinoza's philosophy is a moment in the development of consciousness, namely, not rigorously, etc. Spinoza would say, you have to be rigorous if you follow my system. That's determinism. But no, Spinoza, I simplified Kant very simply. To be a Kantian ethically means, what if everyone acted like me, for the good? For the bad as well. What if the bad thing that I did, what if everyone did the same? Okay, so the idea is, I will do something good and I will try to universalize. Yeah, but Spinoza put it very simply. I try to understand. The more I understand reality, the more I understand that things are the way they are because they have to be. The example of beggars, people who suffer from alcoholism, obesity, cigarette addictions, porn addictions, and all the vices, the more I understand by reading books about sociology, psychology, sociobiology, etc., the more I understand reality, the more I understand that people which are called vicious or negative socially or with a bad behavior, they are determined in a sense that in a modern society there has to be beggars. The beggar is the counterpart of the rich bourgeois family. There are not as many beggars as there are rich bourgeois family, or maybe there are because the bourgeoisie is shrinking down because of the middle class, the sabotage of the economy, etc. But in a society, in any society, there has to be rich people and poor people. And even the poorest, most of the time they are beggars. Sometimes the beggars, they are less poor than the exploited workers because they have more leisure and they have much less needs. I've talked to a beggar this morning, which has helped me understand a lot. I've told him briefly this, the idea of the mirror of the bourgeoisie, but I've learned a lot, and he was kind of satisfied with some aspects of his life because he was free. He was free from the system, as he called this. Yeah. And yeah, so someone who has much less needs is less dependent, and in this sense the workers who earn a very poor wage, if they have to overwork for a miserable paycheck, they will be in a less favorable situation than the beggar, in a way, or not the beggar, the homeless person, or the social outcast, which is not pathological, in the sense that he's just a person who is desocialized without being mentally ill. It's just a person who is kind of weird because he's desocialized. But this is just an example. There are many beggars who are mentally healthy, but they simply have something happen to them, either a divorce or an accident, or they lost a job or whatever, but they were disconnected from society and they did not reconnect, and they found a way to live a more simple life, and they are less poor in a way. On an absolute level, they are more poor, but they are less poor because they have relatively less needs, and they do not suffer from these lack of needs because they have given up on many material objects. So in the sense, yeah, it's a little bit complex, but I understand what I mean. In the sense, they are more at peace than the people who are at the bottom level of the system. Within the system, they have to overwork for miserable paycheck, they have to pay the bills, to fill in the fridge, the education for the kids, which is failing because of state intervention or whatever, or the car, the insurance, etc. These people, they have more wealth on absolute level, but they are poorer because a greater proportion of their income goes to, yeah, that's an illustration. So yeah, my Spinozian view, which is simply rationalism, is to understand. There has to be negative aspects within a social totality, because everything is interrelated in a way. There has to be a vicious people, in a sense of common standards of morality, although the common standards of morality have declined, but there has to be people who suffer from addiction simply because it's a bell-shaped curve distribution. There are virtuous people who work hard, who are very disciplined, who are very rigorous, ascetics, etc. And at the other end of the spectrum, there has to be people who have less self-control, lower intelligence, more impulses, etc., etc. It's socio-biologically determined, and when one understands this, it removes the anger, because one understands that the people who are called vicious or negative, etc., from this perspective, they are determined in a way. But then, that's the first moment to understand theoretically. Theoretical understanding means to incorporate within one's mind the external world by predicating categories, structuring, ordering, by seeing the view not with the eyes but with the mind, to incorporate the exterior within the mind. Practical philosophy, the ethics, means to exteriorize the interior. So a theoretical aspect means the external world has to be conceptually interiorized by being understood, by being grasped conceptually, by grasping the determinations. An example is that if the solar system is understood, how the planet rotates around the sun, the elliptic movement, the speed, the gravitational reciprocal attraction, etc., etc., if it is understood, it is incorporated within the mind. It is idealized in the philosophical sense. Idealism means the other is negated, not suppressed, is negated in a sense that it is understood, and because the other is incorporated within the mind through a process of grasping the determination of the other, whether it's natural object or other humans, when it is understood, it's no longer another, it's aufgehoben, namely preserved and suppressed at the same time. It's suppressed as an alien, but preserved as a superseded other. It's incorporated within the mind. That's the theoretical aspect. And the practical is you start with the inner determination, the will, the tendency, the plan, the project, and you exteriorize through your behavior. That's praxeology by Mises, but actually that's the philosophical meaning of practical action, which is ethics, namely the exteriorization of the will. And the more one understands how the world works, the perspective changes, and then the will, the ethical principles changes as well, because they reciprocally determine one another, because to act rationally means to change, to remain stable to some sort of principle, but to change one's plans or modes of action depending on the context. And the more one understands how the world works, the more the moral aspect changes. And in this sense, what I do is I try to understand the whole world by studying science, and to understand that the negative aspects, the bad aspects of reality, they are part of the totality. It has to be within the totality. So the more I understand, the less frustrated I am. But what I do to even remove even more the frustration is, as long as I can act, is to favor the good aspects, or to change within myself my own negativity to try to bring out the good. An example to illustrate is, I understand why there has to be chemical industrial food, which brings about negative effects like obesity, problems of heart circulation, all sorts of health problems, teeth problems with sweets and candies, etc. So industrial transformed, chemically transformed through artificial products, food is negative on a wider scale. But I understand why it is so, because it's cheaper, because people are biologically determined to appreciate fat and sugar for socio-biological reasons. I will not explain in a long lecture, but it's just briefly how it is. So the more I understand, the more I am at peace. And what I do, the more I understand, is through my will, I try to favor what I consider to be good, namely organic, healthy, local, craftsman food. That it works for everything. Yeah. Also, so that's the beginning of my own American revolution. I am becoming more responsible, more autonomous. It's not possible for me to be completely autonomous, but I'm becoming more self-reliant, more daring. I go out, I talk to people. I am willing to speak more openly. I'm more confident. I take risks, when I say more and more. I become an entrepreneur, not officially, but I have my own business. I do not intend to make money. That's why I'm a specific type of American. Instead, I do not really care about the money. Not as of now. I don't care. I have too much money. I exteriorize my money. I give away my money. What I want is to protect, to defend, to advocate the idea of liberty. There are people who do this wonderfully on a theoretical level, Ron Paul, Anselm and Hobbes, the libertarians, Jeff Deist, etc. But I try to be congruent and to apply this on a singular level, ethically, by being a communist. That's paradoxical, but actually that's speculative maybe, to be a libertarian communist by giving my own property and by behaving according to ethical standards to try to solve problems on a singular local level while elevating myself universally and sharing my thoughts with everyone potentially. Yeah. Also, then I have noticed talking to ordinary people, what I used to call empirical people, which are just human beings, has helped me realize that most people, they love life, they enjoy life. Yeah. Also, I've realized that if everyone around you, here it's very important, I've understood this, if everyone around you is stupid, you are probably the root of all stupidity. If everyone around you is a sinner, you are probably the root of all sins. If everyone around you is evil, you are the root of all evil. It works the other way around. If everyone around you is nice and good, you are the root of all kindness and goodness. And I say this because I understood this many years ago unconsciously. That's the famous quote by Nietzsche: if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss gazes back into you. But Hegel says in the writings of Hegel say what I said, namely, if everything around you, not in your immediate necessary, it can be in your immediate environment, but if your surroundings, whether on a small scale, spatio-temporal level, or the whole world in a way, or on the level of a country or a civilization, if you are the only good person or the only noble or the only intelligent person, everyone around you is stupid and dumb, wicked, etc., try to invert the perspective and ask yourself, maybe you are the problem. That's what I've thought to myself, because on the question of sin, a couple of months ago, I have gone through a religious crisis, like it happens often for me, and I started to believe that everything was a sin. Reading books was a sin. Talking to people was a sin. Drinking coffee was a sin. Drinking tea was a sin. Eating decent food was a sin. Everything was a sin. And I call this being a good Christian. Puritanism than me to reject everything. Everything is a sin. Everything is sinful. I've had this tendency, which explains part of my development. But then I realized, while thinking myself to be righteous and Christian in a good sense, I realized that if everything is sinful, you are not paying a great homage to God by calling everything that God has created, calling this sinful and wicked. This is one of the contradictions of Christianity, the official Christianity, namely the tendency of some fundamentalist Christian to hate everything about the world while praising a God as the creator. So some Christians, they praise God as being the creator of a creation that they despise. I have gone through this. I still have tendencies to call most things, call them sinful, but I will not fall into the other excess of saying, oh, there are no sins, let's do whatever. No, but I have found my new balance, namely, I do no longer accuse others of sins for insignificant stuff like going to a coffee shop and just sitting and talking and drinking ordinary food, sugar or coffee, etc. But I will not judge them for doing this, but I think nonetheless for myself that I don't want this for me any longer. So in a way I will try, I have tried and I will still try to abandon the judgmental aspect of Puritanism, but I myself try to practice Puritanism nonetheless. I do not self-flagellate physically, but I reduce the comfort to a minimum, really, and I enjoy it. My levels of comfort, I reduce them more and more. And I call this good, but I will not fanatically judge others for not being as puritanical as I tend to be. Sometimes, yeah. Also, I have understood over the past, during my own American Revolution, which has consisted, if I had to reformulate this clearly, just to try to bring common sense to my life. I do not reject my metaphysical views of spirit, unity, God, etc. I am the whole of reality, reason, the absolute idea. But I put a little bit of common sense in my view, because precisely I've reread parts of Hegel. The universal has to singularize itself, and they are connected. So in a sense, my singular self is connected to the universal, which is God. So God is within me, and I am within God. And we've had our fair share of struggles. It's not over yet. Thank God, there are still problems to solve and contradictions to overcome for the good. Let's hope so. What I have understood, seriously, is that the relationship between what the Christians call God and Satan. I do not fully understand, but I understand that it's way more complex and subtle than just there are the good guys and there are the bad guys. Of course there is good and evil, but seriously, it's really more complex than just I have believed that the very simple-mindedness, I am all negative, all evil, and it's more complex than that. I will not say, I am all good. Maybe when I'm overconfident, I tend to say I have good aspects, more good aspects than bad, but not always. But I have understood more seriously that here it's really my contact with what I call empirical people, which are just human beings. when I go out and talk to people, I try to share my truth, parts of it, but I do not talk to people by saying, hello, dear empirical person. No, I would, no, I just talk normally, I try to, but I've understood that here, that's really what I've been thinking about recently a lot, is that I have believed since 2018, 4 years ago, whenever I was in my philosophical mood, namely the entire year 2019 and the entire, almost entire year 2022, that I had to make myself suffer morally, physically, psychologically, that I had to humiliate myself, torment myself, make fun of myself, that I was the root of all problems as a singular self, and that I would make people happy by negating myself in all sorts of ways. That I thought, I have held this belief for a very long time, which explains most of what I've said, that I had to negate myself to please others, that the others who don't even know that I exist, that I had to negate myself to please them. But I have realized recently, over the past few weeks, that when I speak, like I said, vaguely seriously, namely in a purely impersonal way, I mean, I don't do this with empirical people precisely because it's way too abstract, but basically when I speak seriously, people are frightened or they throw back negativity at me. And when I am just me, Luca, people, they kind of like me. But being me, just me, Luca, implies trying to be rigorous and serious nonetheless. I have tried and succeeded in lowering my standards. I do not do any editing. I do not read a script. I do not plan very seriously. I improvise. I take notes, nonetheless, to have a broad view, but I speak normally. I have given up on Bestimmtheit, Gegenstand, Dasein, nicht. Dasein is important, but nicht sein, für sich sein, etc. I try to reduce the German subtleties formally in terms of terminology as much as possible. But to be honest, when I grant myself leisure, which for me means to read logic, etc., I read in German. So I still think in German when I think seriously. But I no longer force my very complex German vocabulary onto others, because it's partly a sacrifice that I made, because I've understood that here I will not certainly try to please people, but that's connected to what I said earlier, namely when everyone around you throws back negativity at me whenever I speak vaguely seriously, there's the tendency between saying I have to stand to my principles and to not care, or simply there's judgment and common sense to say, okay, maybe if whenever I speak vaguely seriously, either people are not interested, or they take this negatively, or they reject me, maybe there's a problem with me. I have been reconsidering this, and it happened, I think, a couple of weeks ago. It was the result of a long process, but spending more time with empirical people, a few hours a week, a few hours a day, yeah, from a few hours a week, now it's a few hours a day. I've talked to beggars, salesmen, ordinary persons, walker-bys, passer-bys, administrative persons, businessmen, etc. The more I talk to them, the more I realize, the more it helps me understand American science and German metaphysics, And the more I understand that simply saying, oh, all the others, they are not intelligent enough because I'm a misunderstood genius, etc. Maybe it's partly true. But if I cannot communicate, if no one understands me, no one is interested in anything I say when I talk about God, spirit, the encyclopedia, the totality, divine consciousness, etc. If I completely fail to communicate, it's not because my truth is false, it's maybe simply because the form that I use to communicate, namely the complexity, although it's very limited, is already too complex. And here, the videos that I've watched on Psych2Go a few weeks ago have helped me tremendously, because highly intelligent people, they really suffer from, not all of them, but it's a significant quantitative proportion, they really suffer from failing to communicate sometimes, plus failing to communicate sometimes, plus harsh self-criticism, a tendency toward autism. Yeah. I also wrote that I have suffered and still do suffer from a lack of self-confidence. Being too confident is arrogant, but not having any self-confidence is also kind of a sin, if I had to speak religiously. But basically what I've understood is the reason why I lack confidence is partly because I haven't achieved on an empirical level anything significant, or very few significant things. I mean, I have mostly my personal teenage romance, and I have had other small, in comparison, small achievements on a singular level, but what I call worthless for myself, it's in relation to the standards that I set for myself. And yeah, here I will illustrate. Yeah, I wrote, people hate me or reject me or throw negativity at me because of my standards. I realized this. Yeah, I will illustrate. I know this is the truth. I speak this normally because here I'm in a very stable mood, and it's better to express sometimes difficult truths in a stable mood than in moments of tension or anxiety or lack of self-control. But let us take the example of democracy. I'm not a Democrat, but I'm not judgmental, in the sense I'm not saying, oh, those people who spend their time caring about politics, voting, following elections, etc., they are deluded or they are stupid, etc. I'm not saying this, because the reason why I do not believe in democracy on a singular level, I'm not saying, oh, the others are ignorant and I know better. No, precisely, I say I don't know, because in order to understand and to judge properly for who to vote, one has to have solid knowledge. And I have experienced myself as being ignorant. So for me, I'm not a Democrat, not because I think I know better than you, but because I think I don't know more than you do. For me, it's too complex. I mean, from my perspective, no. Precisely, whenever I started to become vaguely intelligent, I was already too intelligent to believe in democracy. So, but seriously, what I want to express is that the reason why, for instance, I criticize democracy, it's not because I say I know better than you, it's because I say, but a system which allows anyone to vote and give his opinion independently of intelligence, achievement, status, social role, it's not serious, because it's not that I have knowledge and you should let me vote and you are not allowed to vote. No, precisely because I was and still am allowed to vote since the age officially of 18, although I have no social status, no diploma, my intelligence hasn't been checked, I had to make a self-check, my belonging, my emotional attachment hasn't been checked. The proof is that I'm not emotionally attached to the French part of France, to the German part, yes, but it's, in a sense, democracy is not serious. There are no requirements, there are no standards, but I'm not criticizing the Democrats. Here it doesn't mean the Democrats of the Democratic Party, the people who believe in democracy, whether they are politicians or the voters. I do not reproach them something alien in a sense that I don't believe in democracy, but I don't believe that I know better. It's precisely, I know that I don't know about democratic elections, so I simply do not interfere. I do not really care. That's one of the reasons why I fail to communicate. How I fail is because for me to talk about politics in a sense of who is going to vote the election, either it's completely rigged or controlled or uninteresting. That's why I fail to communicate, because what interest, already to have an interest in what I call politician politics, namely voting, going to meetings and party, there has to be a certain level of intelligence, civic interest, leisure, etc. So yeah, usually these are relatively intelligent people, because the lowest in terms of quantitative intelligence, they are excluded de facto of the system. There is less, I mean, at least in the most decadent democracies, people are not even interested in voting. But the reason I've understood is the reason why I have failed to communicate with almost anyone. There are a few persons who have answered and showed interest in what I've been saying, is because my consciousness has been so far removed. So for me, for instance, talking about politics in the politician sense of the word is completely removed from my reality, because it's, for me, it was so self-evident for so many years that it's not serious in a sense that it's not worth the time to bother going to meetings, parties, to form a party, because if you want to bring real change, you will not be accepted in a political meeting, official, etc. That's why I will not make the video too long, because there are still 2 more pages, but I'm becoming really tired and the quality is declining, and I would rather express myself clearly in other circumstances. But here is part of my evil that I explained, is that I am spontaneously, unconsciously evil. I have been, because I have no interest whatsoever for what most people are interested in. And it can hurt. And an example, television. I haven't watched television for I would say for almost a decade, except when I was in hospital a few years ago, but otherwise I haven't consistently watched TV for years and years. That's why my Spinozian self would say I will not blame people who watch TV, but for me the idea that there are people who are interested in watching television, it's been so far removed from my consciousness, because I've gone beyond this stage so many years ago. And another example of some of my standards, which can be sometimes frightening, is that for my empirical story, here it explains, for 10 years, between 2009 and 2019, I lived isolated because I was ashamed of my physical appearance. I had skin problems, I've already told the story, but I had skin problems, but overall I found myself to be repulsive physically and ugly. So the kind of standard that I had is that I am too ugly, I should not appear in public, I am not worthy of exposing my ugliness to my physical ugliness to the world, because that's embarrassing. So I remained, that was the unconscious and even the conscious intention behind my empirical life, namely to remain isolated and self-trapped for the fear of it's not a fear, it's simply I didn't want to expose my ugliness physically. But then I rewatched some of my older videos on the channel Cultural Hegelianism on Alt Censored, who have been preserved by a person. And when I look at myself, well, I wouldn't say that I am attractive, but I'm not that ugly. So I had built a world where, a mental world where I thought ugliness should not be tolerated. I am ugly, I should not be tolerated. So I self-excluded by being in accordance with my implicit standards. The same goes for democracy. I believe that ignorant people, incompetent, cognitively limited, let us say stupid, stupid people should not be allowed to vote. I consider myself to be stupid, incompetent, politically illiterate. I never voted. I never even had the intention of voting. So in a way, I have very, sometimes very high standards, but I apply these standards to myself. Yeah. Another example that I've understood recently because of the reconnection with my singular self, Luca. I give a very simple anecdote. 1 year ago, broadly, when I was in my training to be an accountant, I was 29 years old, officially, and it was the kind of degree that I was following is the equivalent of between 18 and 20 years old. So it's what people are supposed to do after graduation in the French equivalent. But then it was for adult people who had wanted to change job or to find to recover after an accident, to be redirected, to start a new career, to get a new training, etc. Whatever the psychological reasons, but whatever they were, courses, lectures, and practical and applied stage. But it was mostly theoretical during the first part of the training, and I had excellent grades, and at some moment I had my lowest grade. It was around my average grade was around 17 out of 20 in the French educational system. It's not A, B, C, A plus, A minus, etc. It's from 0 to 20. I think my standards were around 17, sometimes 18 for the good aspect. And I had one note, it was 13, that was my lowest. And I consider this as some sort of an embarrassment for myself in comparison with the implicit standards that I set for myself. But this grade happened to be the best of the class. For me, it was an embarrassment. But the worst for me was the best for all the others, in just this example. And by connecting my recent empirical experience with my past empirical experience, I've understood that sometimes I unconsciously hurt people because there are things that I cannot tolerate for myself, because I set myself standards when I care about something. I set for myself standards, and people throw back negativity at me, or they feel not embarrassed, they feel humiliated or hurt because they feel downgraded in a way. And here it's connected with most of what I have produced on the channel Cultural Hegelianism and Eternal Light and Phénoménologie de l'Esprit. Most of my content has been an attempt to reach the standards of Hegel, as I call this. And I have lived for almost 3 years of my life now. It was 2.5, but 2.5 years, let us say, in the mind of the writings of Hegel, the logic mostly, the encyclopedia as well. And these are my standards. These are the standards that I've set for myself. And this is the criteria that I unconsciously and implicitly use to judge others, not necessarily negatively, but to judge myself in comparison to others. This is what explains, I've understood this recently because of empirical experience, why I have been completely misunderstood, why I have completely failed to communicate. It's simply because my intellectual standards, the caliber, the criteria is intellectual genius. And I experience myself as being not on the same level of being worthless intellectually. So I have experienced myself as being worthless because my standards of worth and value are so elevated in a way. And I insist upon this because it has played a very important role in my psychological development over the past couple of months. I have been genuinely surprised to receive negativity for expressing thoughts or ideas that I thought were good. And intellectually, I still know that they are right, intellectually. But I expect to receive negativity, but I did not expect to receive negativity for what I thought were my good aspects. And it has hurt me in a way because I've received negativity for things. I will not make a joke about das Ding, die Eigenschaften thing and its properties or something, no, but here I will not overthink. I have received negativity either on the internet or in empirical conversation from people because of in response to ideas that I expressed that I thought were good and I know are vaguely rigorous. It's not on the same caliber of the German metaphysician, but yeah, and it has played a very important role recently in my psychological development. It has really reshaped my worldview, not completely, but it has I have been forced to reconsider in a very fundamental way, not very fundamental, no, it's in a fundamental way, my worldview. Yeah. And here I've already said this in the previous video, but I will not fake in a sense that I will not play the role that I can. It's not a role that I play, it's what I experience, what I have experienced recently, but here I will express in a calm and peaceful mood. It hurts to be rejected for what I thought was good. Because I expected to be rejected for my negativity. Namely, that I've been confessing, I am the root of all evil, so I expect, I have expected and I still expect at some moment people say, so it was you, all the crimes, the rape, the corruption, the attacks, etc. I expect at some point people to recognize me. I don't know how it's going to happen. They say, you are responsible for all our troubles. I've been expecting this, but what I have received is that's not how people formulate it, but negativity because of my, what I called my good aspect. Because I have been trained intellectually to reason in terms of rigor, systematicity, clarity, totality, seriousness. And here I will be serious because I know this aspect of myself is that I can be frightening for myself in a way, because I have been terrorized many times over the past few years by in a way aspects of myself that I did not recognize or only later. So I have terrorized myself, and I still do, because eventually if reality is my mirror, I can only be afraid by myself, which brings about a psychiatric problem in a way, because the relation to self, multiple identities, etc. But I have tormented myself psychologically, unconsciously, but I have understood that I can be very frightening for others without having the intention to, simply because sometimes simply I'm just consistent or vaguely serious. In a sense, here I will use the example, I will conclude the video on this, the example of what I've been thinking about with my minimalism. If I had to define myself politically, I would say I am white, left and right. I have a right-wing tendency to try to balance the excessive of the masochistic, self-hating white aspect of the white psyche, which is the tendency of the modern world. So here I have the phenomenal appearance of spirit in front of me, the simple categories, but in a way I have been, here it's determinism, but it's how it is, leaning towards the right, like many people, white people of my generation, because of the zeitgeist, because the zeitgeist is a reaction against the current ideological context, namely cultural Marxism or globo homo, as they call this, or whatever, deconstructionism or the woke ideology, whatever. It brings about a reaction which is radical towards the right. There are various layers: conservatism, patriotism, nationalism, white identity, traditionalism, return of the former forms of the radical right, etc., etc. So I am partly determined by the zeitgeist, but I understand. But the purpose of this shift toward the right is to restore balance between the left and the right without excesses. But what was I saying? Yeah, about ecology. So I am partly an ecologist. I will not explain the various reasons, but simply because Europeans act universally, they universalize their ethical standards. I've understood this by studying my own psyche and by studying the psyche of white leftists and the history of the white race and just ordinary interactions with white people, is that it's spontaneous in white people to constantly universalize the behavior, the ethical and moral behavior. Kevin MacDonald, in his book The Western Tradition and Liberal Individualism, talks about this. The hunter-gatherers ethos, aristocratic ethos, the social status within society based on reputation. This is the origin, sociobiologically, in a sociobiological perspective, the origin of virtue signaling. One has to claim one's own virtue in front of the members of the group in order to access status. That's why there is a constant competition among white people for asserting one's own moral status. That's the history of the white race. In a nutshell, a struggle for status through moral competition in various ways. Ancient Greece, Rome, the Middle Ages, the 19th century, it was against slavery. The modern world, it's against racism. The Middle Ages, it was faith to Christianity. In Rome, it was the good of the republic, belonging to aristocracy, the prestige, the military prestige, or the prestige of being a patron in those who had those who distributed money and had clients, and yeah, being a member of the aristocracy, etc. In Athens, it was partly being a good citizen, being potentially elected, being able to be elected for democratic instances, etc. Democracy in ancient Greece was not the modern egalitarian view. It was a patriarchal, partly racist in a way, homophobic, not really, not in ancient Greece, but it was a traditionalist, yeah. But what was I saying? Yeah, ecology. It's partly part of the moral competition, but it's also simply a universal duty, namely to lower consumption and pollution. And I have this spontaneously in me. I don't have to imitate white leftist. It's maybe even my right-wing self. It's simply myself, namely I know that ecology, I mean, ecology is not a problem, it's a solution, but the ecological crisis, etc. It's not that I care about what leftists say, it's that in my view, to be a white person, namely a European anthropologically, not a European of Europe, but an anthropological European, means to act universally out of moral principle for the greater good of the universal. It's part of the ethos, the ethics, yeah. So, to reduce consumption, waste, comfort, pollution, transportation, etc., it's spontaneous in me. When I think seriously about politics, I already had this in 2018, when I was in my ascending path. I identify myself as a religious fundamentalist, libertarian, deep ecologist. Yeah, it was around May, I think 2018. And in a sense, I am recovering my lost self, my former self in a way. But I will become, as long as I act, politically, I will become an ecologist. But the problem for others is that if I do ecological activism, I will be serious. And this can be frightening, because for me, I have lowered down my standards of living. I eat raw vegetables and fruits and sometimes dry bread, and I sleep on the ground, and I take cold showers, and I get rid of my material comfort and my clothes, etc., etc. For me, this is almost enjoyment. I enjoy doing this. It's not really, I mean, it can be sometimes discomfortable, but I find enjoyment in doing this. And it's not if, but when I start doing, or I already do, but when I officially start doing politics in the name of ecology, not just that, there's also the communist aspect, the libertarian aspect, there are all the aspects, but when I start to take ecology seriously, I can anticipate that some people will not be happy, and they might even be frightened, because the standard that I set for myself is simply, if I do ecology, I want this to be done seriously. Namely, I really want to lower down. It's not that I want to lower down the standards of others, it's that I want to lower down my own standards, not the ethical standards, but the standards of living, the comfort, the prosperity, etc., etc. But for me, it's spontaneous. It's just because I take this vaguely seriously. Like giving up all my books, my material possession, giving up my money. I've read an article today about a young Austrian woman. She's a multi-millionaire. I'm not a multi-millionaire. I used to have 100,000 euros broadly. Now it's a little bit less, but I keep giving my money. But that's part of my frightening aspect, is that if I do politics, it will be libertarian, communist, ecologist at the same time. Sometimes it's contradictory, but I will try to balance. But I want this first to be universal, it's for everyone, and to be serious. And I've understood that when I'm vaguely serious, people start to become frightened. Although I think I do this for the good. So what I've realized recently is that when I do what I think is good, people are frightened. Yeah. And I will conclude because it brings about the question. I wrote this, but that's what I think about. There are other things that I wrote, but I will not talk about this in this video. But the distinction between goodness and justice. What is good is not necessarily just. They can be in conflict with one another. Someone who is just good is not fair. If you are good equally with everyone, that's not fair. Justice is not goodness. It's not, I mean, it's not a choice, but simply that the good aspect of God and the just aspect of God, they are one, but they are nonetheless distinct. Yeah. Eventually, here I will be serious as a Hegelian. Real goodness has to be just, and real justice has to be good. Because if they were not united, they would not be real in a way. But what I mean is, just goodness is here. Here we'll make a play on what just goodness is not just. Does it work in English? Just means only. Here I can be smart with the English language. Just goodness is not just. The first just means only, and the second means fair, which in reformulate only. Here it's pidgin English. Only goodness is not fair. Just goodness is not just. Just goodness is not fair. Do you follow? Yeah. What I mean is, here I will praise myself. I can do good play on words with the English language. It's difficult. It's not. It's my second language. You know, it's not even my second language. I'm not bilingual. I just learned this in school. There's a lot to say about the French educational system, but I nonetheless, by being a high school dropout at the age of 16, early 17, but 16 years old. I haven't studied English for many years, except in 2020. Otherwise, I'm self-taught since the age of 16, and my English is not as bad. And here it's connected with my standards. I have believed for many months that the reason why people were not interested in my videos, one of the reasons was that my English wasn't good enough. That I did not express myself clearly enough, that there was a problem with my accent, my lack of vocabulary, that this is the kind of standards, because actually I know that actually I speak English rather well, not as good as people who are fluent in English as a second language, of course, but here it's part also with the standards. When I've listened to Caroline, if you watch this, you've helped me a lot, and I love you, Caroline. Hopefully you will love me too. I know you will. I know you do. How could you not love me? Well. When I listen to Caroline speak French, Caroline is fantastic. I will not deny this, but her accent when she speaks French, it's terrible. and there are other Americans, when they speak a foreign language, that's the caricature that arrogant, here the negative, arrogant Europeans of Europe who think, oh, these Americans are decadent, listen to they are so self-centered that they cannot learn to speak a foreign language. I thought this was a bad cliche. Because for me, in my view, the average American who is competent, has a high IQ, the average white American, he can speak at least 3 languages fluently. That's what I believe, because this is America. But actually, my common sense, by reading the books that I promote, there really is a problem with the educational system in America. And these Americans, sometimes they are really self-centered for the negative aspect, namely, they have to learn Spanish, now that America is being Hispanized, one might say. No, but seriously, I know it's true, but in this sense, this is part of maybe maybe sometimes the frightening aspect, namely my standards for speaking just English. When I said the standards, these are the standards of Shakespeare, Wordsworth, Byron, etc. And when I read these authors, I no longer try to, but when I read classical English authors, I struggle to understand, because the vocabulary is complex, the terminology is complex. I need a dictionary, otherwise I cannot appreciate. I've already told this anecdote, but it's becoming clearer in my mind, in the sense that what I call bad for myself is bad in relation to certain standards which are actually very high. This is where some of the problems of my singular self are connected to some of the problems of the universal, which I call the real God. I will conclude in a sentence that I've been thinking about. I can be frightening for others because I have a culture. And culture can be appeasing, joyful, pleasant, wonderful, but it can be frightening because it sets standards. And I have made this mistake of believing that others were not interested, or because I had nothing interesting to say, because they knew more, or because I was not worthy of their attention, because I had nothing interesting to say, because of lack of seriousness, lack of rigor, lack of intelligibility, lack of credentials. But talking with ordinary people in a more intense way over the past 10 days or so, and even before, the past weeks and the past month, has led me to understand that the reason why people do not react, almost no reaction when I talk, whether empirically with, in my day-to-day basis, I develop less complex ideas, not because I'm not willing to express my truth, but because it would take too much time, it's too complex. It's not too complex because of a lack of intelligence, it's too complex because of lack of cultural references, because the cultural level of France is so far below the cultural level of America, which already within America, when I say the cultural level of America, I envision that the average American knows all what I know, because I have this belief that here, that's my negativity for the good. I believe that everyone is competent except me. But if everyone around me, that I've said about evil and stupidity, if everyone around me is stupid, I am the root of all stupidity. If everyone around me is evil or wicked or a sinner, I am the root of all evil or of all wickedness. But if everyone around me is competent, and I think of myself as being incompetent, maybe I have to invert the perspective. If I keep imagining that all the others are super smart, they know how to handle themselves in every way of life, they are super competent, they are fluent in every language, they know about the most recent advances in science, which I don't on all aspects, but if I keep imagining that everyone is super competent, because when I try to talk to them, they show no interest or very few interest, so I imagine that it's because they know better, or I've understood that actually no, it's because of all that I've been saying, namely that my standards sometimes they are way too high, my level of complexity and sometimes intelligence, which can be negative for the self or causes suffering, or because it brings about unintelligibility, but I've understood this, it's more and more clear that I have to invert the perspective, not to give up on my universal self. In a sense, I will keep trying, I will keep sharing universal ideas in a rigorous way, not like in this video. I will do this in French, also in English, probably on the channel Phénoménologie de l'Esprit, depending on the circumstances, maybe on this channel again, because I have other things to say, but I will keep sharing what I call serious thoughts in a serious way, but and here I will conclude this. Talking with ordinary persons, I have willingly confronted myself with others by going out. For me, it's a challenge, because here I will say what I think, because I've understood, thanks to my empirical encounters, that in order to speak the truth, I have to speak directly to someone and to look at him, to look at her, to look at the other in the eyes, and to have a direct interaction. And I've understood that I have to be willing. I am willing, and I will do this as long as I speak publicly on these channels. I have to be willing, but also to be able to express the same worldview to any other, whether it's the anonymous, as of now, the anonymous author of the internet, as of now, in the short term, it's the 15 or 20 people who watch my videos usually, but potentially it can be everyone in the long term. But I've understood recently that I have to be capable of expressing the same truth to the average person who will stumble upon this video and follow 2 hours and 30 while thinking that what I'm saying is worthy of attention. So these are really the 1 or 2 followers who have followed me up until now through my trials and tribulations, as they call this. Trials and not yet, maybe, but tribulations, yes. For the trial, we'll see that later. Maybe I need a lawyer. I can defend myself. Yeah, through my tribulation, yeah. What was I saying? Yeah, I understood that I have to be able, which means first to be willing to speak the same truth to everyone, either through the medium of the internet or public communication and through the medium of direct interaction. But the problem is that I have to elevate the level of whoever I am talking to in terms of science, which means mostly American, overwhelming modern American science or Anglo-Saxon science, and culture, and it's very difficult, but this is a challenge. But if I speak a truth which is so complex, which actually is very simple, my truth is becoming more and more simple with the coming months and years and days. It's simply God is being. There is being. Being is God. That's really the most simple. But when I say this, people do not react. But when I understood this, I have devoted every waking hour, almost, and even at night, but because resting is for the purpose of being fit for the waking hours, to God. That's why since the end of February, I've been working every day, between 14 and 16, sometimes 18 hours a day, every day. I don't remember having taken maybe a couple of days off, but I've been working every day, every hour, transforming my mindset, my lifestyle, my interaction with the world, because of this knowledge that God is being, but being is not just being, pure being is nothing. So the unity of being and nothing brings about becoming, it brings about a result, Dasein, Nichtsein, Bestimmtheit, etwas, etwas anders, für sich sein, eins, repulsion, many, attraction, quantity, etc. That's the logical process. It's not mechanically because I can understand, but yeah, so the reason why I fail to arouse interest, or there are 2 or 3 persons who are interested, is simply because I fail to communicate, because I do not try by I've understood I could make invest in a formal training to make a good presentation, but I've given up on this. I will not, I mean, if I can improve the formal aspect, yeah, but I will not sacrifice time or money to just please aesthetically. I've gotten rid of my nice clothes. I cut my hair with scissors, but I will not make makeup. I've not used the lights. I will when I have to yeah, but I don't really care about the formal presentation because I focused on the intellectual content, and even here the intellectual content is improvised, but I share what I know are important, not truths because truth is a process, but important insights. And yeah. I've learned a lot by talking to ordinary people, disabled persons, beggars, outcasts. That's part of the Christian process of learning. That's my Jesus aspect, maybe to go in the world with the outcast of good society, because the perspective of the negative from a sociological perspective, namely those who are excluded because of accidents, bad behavior, systemic exclusive process, they give a unique perspective on the totality. Yeah. So talking with people who are in difficult sociological conditions has helped me understand more and more the total view of a society. And I will not give up on what I call now my empiricism and my American common sense. Namely, I will keep, as long as I can peacefully go out, buy groceries every day, clean the streets, give food stamps, and talk with a few people that I interact with, and I will keep my minimalism, my communism, getting rid of my property, not throwing off, giving away to people who need it more. I reduce my trash because I have no plastic consumption almost. I reduce my trash. I reduce my energy consumption. I use no electricity to cook food. I use no gas to cook food either because I eat fresh vegetables and fruits. I do not use cold water. I sleep on the ground. I do not use sleeping pills, cigarettes of course no pornography, no alcohol, no chewing gums, no cigarettes, no sugar, artificial sugar. So I really my intention is to communicate. Maybe I will do a little bit of show business to be really an American completely. Now I mean in the common sense American mixed with a little bit of self-reliance of the 19th century, where minimalism, they did not call this minimalism because it was not from excess of prosperity to downgrading the standard. It was the natural, in a way, in ordinary sense, the ordinary conditions of new people exploring new territories where they had to build their own wealth. So they were poor in the process of becoming rich, and I do the opposite. But yeah, there's the show business American. Probably I intend to make videos which are really entertaining for the sake of sharing my ethical ideas. I'm not saying that I'm good, but simply my ethical perspective that I will keep repeating, because here I will conclude the video on this. I don't know when I will die. I don't know what is after death. But I know that I have to die like everyone else at some moment, and there is, I would say, there is something after death. Something means something else, because something is something else, because it has the limit. The limit is that which gives something its being, and also its non-being, and the non-being of something is something else. And the two are united. That's Fürsichsein. That's ideality, Idealität. That's idealism. That's unity. Yeah. Yeah. What I want to say about ethics, I will not say that I am all good. Suddenly it's not I have been the negative. No, I am the positive. If I am the positive, it means that you are all negative, because it has to be balanced. I would rather be the negative. At least I can see positive all around me. That's a joke. That's a joke. I'm in a mood to make jokes. It's not always okay. No, but seriously, I will not fall into the trap of believing that I am all good, because it might be a trap, but I am in the process of saying that I'm not completely negative. It's logically impossible. And also, I genuinely have qualities in me, good qualities, and I'm in a struggle against myself, and a struggle can be a war which ends in death eventually, and eventually we all have to die, and I have to die at some moment. But a struggle or even a conflict, there can be peace treaties with the conflicting party, and I have signed, not officially, but with my mind, I have signed peace treaties on some aspects of myself. Namely, I have cleaned my room. If I have to leave this room, I will clean or order the immediate environment where I find myself in. If I have the physical and intellectual capability of doing this, I will always try to order my immediate environment. I will reduce my level of comfort. I will grant myself the right sometimes to make an extra, maybe to eat a little bit of honey, if it's maybe I've given up on alcohol. If I have the possibility to drink a little bit of German beer, I will grant myself this right if the circumstances are. But I think I will not compromise on the lowering down of comfort, because I find my own moral comfort in renouncing my physical comfort. Maybe I will still buy a few books at local bookshops to encourage, stimulate local businesses. I have done this to distribute, but for myself, maybe I will grant myself the right to buy a few books, but I no longer intend to buy books. This is part of my addiction that I have to give up on, and I have given up on. This is part of my struggle. I have given up on a very serious addiction, namely the will to possess and control and accumulate all the books about interesting topics, all the good books. I have given up on this. But my minimalism, my communism, my ecology, my libertarianism, I will probably not go back. Or slightly, depending on the circumstances, but these are peace treaties with myself, in a sense that I find peace in this kind of ascetic discipline of life, and I will not pick up the cigarette butts every time I go out for the rest of my life. Because I can imagine situations where people say, we will annoy you, here's a, how do you call this, pack, not a pack, a mountain of cigarette butts, pick them up. You said you would, now pick them up. No, if it's how it happened, no, but seriously, as long as I can peacefully go out and I have nothing better to do, and it's really good to do this, I will clean the streets. The streets will be cleaned wherever I walk. As long as I can peacefully walk, I will clean the streets until civil servants become irrelevant. This is part of the bullshit job. They will quit their bullshit job and be able to do something productive for their own intellectual development, like watching videos on the internet about interesting topics like philosophy or cosmology, science, anthropology, etc., etc. That's part of the plan. It's not a scheming, it's simply a consciously elaborated, very simple plan to share the view of the totality, to encourage people to solve their problems. This is what I'm intending to do tomorrow or the day after, in English, in French, to share all my links. I already have, but I keep improving this document, restructuring, where I will help people solve their problems. It's not completely good, because I am the root of their problems at some level, one might say, but it has helped me so much, genuinely, to the channel Psych2Go, the intelligence, the videos about intelligence, and the videos about the various psychological or psychiatric problems. It has helped me so much finding appeasement, not completely, but parts of appeasement, that I can only recommend others. I won't really hear the good that I had for myself. I want to share it with others, and if there are people who suffer from various psychological problems, at some level all people do, because they are made in the image of God, but people who seriously suffer from high intelligence and or psychological, psychiatric problems, I will try to cure them by encouraging them to watch these videos. And yeah, that's what I had to say. So I have begun a revolution, which is first an inner revolution, and I will keep trying to appease my inner torment while not compromising on my negative aspects, or some of my negative aspects, but I will try to keep ordering my inner soul, which is tied partly with the body. That's why sleeping is important, and a healthy diet. I mean, I'm not sure that just raw vegetable is strictly healthy in the long term, but as of now, this is the best compromise that I've found. I need to lower down my consumption, and I've lost a lot of weight for the good. I am fitter, I walk much better. I'm still partly disabled, but I walk much better. I am more, how do you call this? I've lost a lot of weight in the face for the good. I was fat and how do you call this? Here my vocabulary is not good enough. I was too, yeah. I've become much more slim. I have lost a lot of weight. I walk better. I am more at peace when I can sleep. I appreciate every glass of water, every rest, because I work all days, and when I rest I feel that I deserve to rest because I have worked. It's not blue collar work, it includes reading, because I use reading for the purpose of producing intellectual content and unethical content as well. I've understood this. And also sometimes it's just sitting and meditating, reflecting, but it's part of my work in a sense that it is dedicated to the sole purpose of thinking about God. And yeah. So what was it? Yeah, the way I envision this, I am signing peace treaties with myself, and I try to do good to others, not to say, oh, suddenly I am good. No, but simply when I can talk to people, I say, I do not do good for your own sake. I do good because in my worldview, you are a mirror of myself, and if I do not like this reflection, if I'm not in a mood to break the mirror, which would be a mistake, but I will try to clean, not in the sense that you are dirty, no, but to clean in a sense to clear, to heal the reflections that I don't like. Illustrated means, for instance, I encourage people to quit smoking, drinking, consuming sugar, etc., etc. But I cannot do this systematically, go out to every person that I encounter and harass him or her, do this, do that. No, but that's why I try, when I have the opportunity, which is sometimes contradictory because there are many opportunities in empirical reality, but I try to balance my singular and my universal self to heal the psychiatric problems, the psychological problems, to bring order and to radiate light from the center. It begins in the center. I want to become the center of my own world. I have also decided to stop. I'm still very interested in the works of others, but I will stop fanatically chasing others and trying to convince them. I have to convince myself, and if I radiate serenity, it's very difficult because there are frightening and difficult and conflicting aspects within reality, but if I can be more and more serene and calm and find inner tranquility, it will radiate around me, and I will attract, here these are the kind of feminine, energetic psychology, the channels that we find on YouTube. I will radiate positive vibes, although I am the negative, but the negative comes with the positive. I will radiate positive vibes, and I will attract negative people to balance my positivity. No, I will attract positive people as well. And then people will probably become annoying, asking all sorts of questions. Listen to Eminem, he said I can anticipate. But seriously, I've understood that I cannot solve very important problems on a geopolitical, political level if I am completely unbalanced, completely irresponsible, completely immature, completely... I understood this 4 years ago, but I took the wrong path to try to solve the problems. Now, with more maturity and more intelligence and more wisdom, I still cling to my old plan. Namely, I have to become responsible, self-reliant, autonomous, independent, competent. These are qualities that I attribute and that I draw inspiration from America, as I envision this. So this is the story as of now of my own inner American revolution, and because I studied logic, the inner is the outer. I will exteriorize more and more, and yeah. That's what I could say. I've been talking for 2 hours and 40 minutes. I'm not sure that I'm gonna make these kind of videos many more often. I will not post the video immediately. I will download the video, go to sleep, make my donation to Ron Paul, the Ron Paul Institute, and Wikipedia, and eventually I have to unify all levels of existence, and I have to bring peace in the long term, to bring peace at all levels. And to conclude, to summarize what I've been saying, the predominant idea, I should have begun with this, but I didn't consciously knew, but I knew that I would say this. But eventually my long-term goal is to find peace, ontological peace. That's the long-term goal, but there are many, as envisioned, there are many transitory steps towards achieving this goal. And I have understood recently, that's the summary of what I've been saying, that my singular self, first, is important, and second, is partly valuable. I will not renounce the idea that the negative has to be negated, but I have been taking care of my singular self in a sense of order, discipline, growing up, becoming more mature. It's not enough. I am not yet mature. I am not yet... I mean, I am responsible, but I am not capable of taking all the responsibility. I am not yet competent as much as I would like to. I still have a lot to improve, but here I will end with my motto. What I say to people that I talk to about small problems like cigarettes, alcohol, etc. I say to them, as long as you live, try to improve. Struggle against yourself and try to improve. That will be my motto. I will try to improve by struggling against myself. I have found on an ethical level a coherent path, and here I will comment my ethics. I have found some of my ethics in my own writings, inspired by my readings, etc. But in my own writings, I reread what I wrote in the month of July. I have the documents, and I will publish the document. It's not new, but it's updated. And by following my own line of ethics, I find peace, in a way, partly, and stability, and yeah. So this has been a chronic of my my own American Revolution. Yeah. I will stop the video here, and I will sleep, to rest, to have chemical balance within my brain, to be productive, and